I'll never forget the day my world came crashing down around me. It was a typical Wednesday evening when I received a text message that would change my life forever. The message was from an unknown number, but the words on the screen were all too familiar. "Alvaro loves me, not you." My mind was racing as I tried to process the words. Who could have sent this? And what did they mean? I thought I had a perfect marriage with my husband, Alvaro, and a beautiful friendship with my best friend, Sophia. But this message suggested otherwise. My name is Lucia, and I'm 32 years old. I've always believed in the fairy tale, the perfect marriage, the loving husband, and the supportive friends. But that message was the beginning of a journey that would shatter all my illusions. I've always been a trusting person, maybe too trusting. I thought my marriage was rock solid, built on love, trust, and mutual respect. But as I looked back on the past few months, I realized there were signs, little things that I had ignored or dismissed as insignificant. The late nights at the office, the sudden interest in solo hobbies, the distance between us that I had attributed to stress. It all made sense now. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the picture was ugly. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. The question was, what would I do next? Would I confront Alvaro, or would I try to salvage what was left of our marriage? I didn't know, but one thing was certain. My life would never be the same again. I was 32 years old, and my life seemed perfect. I had a loving husband, Alvaro, and a beautiful friendship with Sophia. We had known each other since college, and our friendship had only grown stronger over the years. Alvaro and I had been married for 7 years, and we had built a life together. We had a cozy apartment in the city, and our weekends were filled with lazy mornings and long walks. Sophia was always around, sometimes joining us for dinner or drinks. I thought we were more than just friends. We were family. Alvaro and I met at a book club meeting. We both loved literature, and our conversations flowed easily. We started dating, and before long, we knew we were meant to be together. Our friends and family loved him, and I did too. He was charming, kind, and supportive. Sophia was thrilled when we got married. She was my maid of honor, and her speech at the wedding still makes me smile. Sophia and I would spend hours talking about our lives, sharing our deepest secrets and dreams. She knew everything about me, or so I thought. We would meet for coffee or lunch, and our conversations were always lively. Alvaro would often joke that we were like two peas in a pod, and he would tease us about our inside jokes. I thought our friendship was unbreakable. My marriage with Alvaro was comfortable. We didn't have any major issues, or so I thought. We would argue occasionally, but we always made up in the end. Alvaro was a hard worker, and he provided for us. He was ambitious, and I admired that about him. I was happy, or at least I thought I was. I had everything I wanted: a loving husband, a great friend, and a fulfilling life. But looking back, I realized that I was living in a bubble. I was oblivious to the signs, the subtle hints that something was off. Alvaro's late nights at the office, his distant behavior, it all seemed normal to me. Sophia's occasional absences, her evasive behavior, I brushed it off as her being busy. I was blinded by my own happiness, my own perceptions. And that's when it hit me, the realization that I didn't know everything. There were cracks in our relationships, cracks that would eventually shatter our lives. As I reflect on those days, I wonder how I missed the signs. Was I too caught up in my own world? Did I ignore the warning signals? I don't know. But one thing is certain. My life was about to change forever. The question is, how would I react when the truth finally came to light? Would I be strong enough to face it? Or would I crumble under the weight of reality? Only time would tell. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the computer screen in front of me. It was a typical Monday morning, and I was already running late for work. Alvaro had left for the office early, and Sophia hadn't called or texted me all morning. I was about to shut down my laptop when I noticed an unfamiliar email in my inbox. The sender's address was a jumbled mix of letters and numbers, and the subject line read, "For your eyes only." My curiosity piqued. I hesitated for a moment before opening the email. The message was brief and cryptic. "Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th Street at 5 p.m. Come alone." There was no signature or indication of who had sent the message. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I read the words. Who could have sent this, and what did they want from me? I tried to brush it off as a prank, but something about the message resonated deep within me. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, my mind wandering back to the mysterious email. Who was behind it, and what did they want? I couldn't concentrate on my work, and my colleagues noticed my distraction. As the clock ticked closer to 5 p.m., I found myself growing more and more anxious. At 4:30 p.m., I decided to take a chance and head to the coffee shop. I grabbed my bag and told my boss I had a personal appointment. The walk to the coffee shop was short, but my mind was racing with possibilities. What if this was some kind of trap? What if I was walking into something I couldn't handle? As I entered the coffee shop, I scanned the room for any familiar faces. It was a typical Monday evening, with a few students studying in the corner and a couple chatting over coffee. I spotted a figure in the back, partially hidden by a pillar. The figure beckoned me over, and I felt my heart racing as I walked towards them. It was Sophia. She looked nervous and agitated, glancing over her shoulder as if she feared being followed. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Sophia hesitated before speaking in hushed tones. "I've been noticing some strange things about Alvaro. I think he's hiding something from you." My world came crashing down in that moment. I thought about all the late nights, the distant behavior, and the times he'd brushed off my concerns. Could it be true? Was Alvaro hiding something from me? I looked at Sophia, searching for answers, but her expression only deepened my confusion. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophia leaned in closer, her words spilling out in a rush. "I've seen him arguing with people I don't know. He's been getting mysterious calls, and he always steps outside to take them. I think something's going on, something big." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't know what to believe or who to trust. Sophia's words hung in the air, leaving me with more questions than answers. What was Alvaro hiding? And why was Sophia telling me this now? The seeds of doubt had been sown, and I knew my life would never be the same. As I sat there, staring at Sophia, I realized that my world was about to change forever. The question was I ready for what was coming? I looked at Sophia, and she nodded as if she knew exactly what I was thinking. "We need to dig deeper," she said, her voice firm and determined. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. Together, we would uncover the truth, no matter how difficult it might be. I stood there, my eyes locked on Alvaro's, demanding answers. "What's going on?" I asked again, my voice firm. Alvaro took a step back, his eyes darting around the warehouse as if searching for an escape. "Lucia, I can explain," he stammered. But I cut him off, my patience wearing thin. "Explain what? Who is that?" I nodded towards the person he was talking to, my voice rising. Alvaro sighed, rubbing his temples. It's a business associate. We're discussing a potential deal." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "At midnight? In an abandoned warehouse?" Alvaro's eyes shifted, and I knew he was hiding something. "Who is she?" I pressed, my voice cold. Alvaro hesitated, glancing at the woman who was watching us with interest. "Her name is a colleague. We're working on a project together." I laughed, a harsh sound. "A project that requires secret meetings in the middle of the night?" The woman stepped forward, her eyes locked on mine. "I think it's time we cleared the air, Lucia." Her voice was familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Alvaro's eyes widened in warning, but she continued, "I'm Sophia." My mind reeled as I stared at the woman, my best friend's face now etched in my memory. What was going on? Why was Alvaro meeting with Sophia in secret? The questions swirled in my head, but I knew I had to keep pushing for answers. "What's going on, Alvaro?" I demanded, my voice firm. "Why are you meeting with Sophia in secret?" Alvaro's face turned red, and he took a step forward, but Sophia intervened. "Let me explain, Lucia. Alvaro and we've been working together on something. A project that could change our lives." I turned to her, my eyes narrowing. "What kind of project?" Sophia's eyes locked on mine, and she took a deep breath. "We'll get to that later," she said. "First, you need to know that Alvaro and we've grown close. Too close." The words hung in the air, and I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I looked at Alvaro, and his guilty expression confirmed my worst fears. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophia's words dripped like poison. "We're in love, Lucia. Alvaro and we can't keep it hidden anymore." The warehouse seemed to spin around me, and I felt like I was losing my footing. I looked at Alvaro, and he didn't deny it. Instead, he took a step closer to Sophia, his arm around her waist. "It's true, Lucia. I'm sorry." The words cut deep, and I felt like my world was crumbling around me. I turned and walked away, the sound of their voices fading into the distance. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to get out of there, away from the lies and the betrayal. I sat in stunned silence, the words echoing in my mind like a cruel mantra. Alvaro's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of remorse, but it was quickly replaced by a defensive glint that made my blood boil. "How could you?" I asked, my voice low and even. Alvaro shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Sophia, who was watching us with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Lucia, please understand," Alvaro began, but I cut him off. "Understand? You want me to understand why you're cheating on me with my best friend?" My words dripped with venom, and Alvaro flinched. Sophia stepped forward, her voice laced with a false sense of calm. "Lucia, it's not what you think. Alvaro and we fell in love. It just happened." I laughed, a harsh sound that seemed to shock both of them. "Fell in love?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You fell in love? With my husband? My best friend?" The words tasted bitter on my tongue. Alvaro took a step forward, his eyes pleading. "Lucia, I'm sorry. I know I've hurt you, but what?" I interrupted, my anger boiling over. "But you couldn't help yourself? You couldn't resist the temptation of my best friend?" Sophia's face reddened, and for a moment, I thought she might lash out. Instead, she spoke in a measured tone. "Lucia, we're happy. Alvaro and we're meant to be together." The words were like a knife to my heart, twisting and turning with each passing moment. I looked at Alvaro, and for a moment, I saw the man I once loved. But it was a fleeting glimpse, overshadowed by the reality of his betrayal. "You're leaving me for her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Alvaro nodded, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I'm sorry, Lucia. I really am." The apology seemed hollow, and I felt a cold fury spreading through my veins. I turned to Sophia, my eyes locking onto hers. "And you?" I said, my voice icy. "You're just going to take him from me? After everything we've been through?" Sophia's expression faltered, but only for a moment. "Lucia, this has nothing to do with you," she said, her voice firm. "This is about Alvaro and me. We're meant to be together." The words cut deep, and I knew in that moment that our friendship was irreparably damaged. I stood there, the truth laid bare before me like a festering wound. Alvaro and Sophia's betrayal hung in the air, a palpable presence that seemed to suffocate me. I knew I had to get out of there, away from the lies and the deceit. I turned and walked away. The sound of their voices fading into the distance, I walked out of the room, leaving Alvaro and Sophia behind. The silence was deafening, a heavy blanket that suffocated me. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. I stumbled to the kitchen, my legs shaking beneath me. I opened the fridge, staring blankly at the contents. I had no idea what I was looking for. The sound of the door opening behind me made me turn. Alvaro stood there, his eyes red-rimmed. "Lucia, please talk to me," he said, his voice cracking. I turned back to the fridge, my voice cold. "There's nothing to talk about. You've made your choice." Alvaro took a step closer, his hands reaching out. "Lucia, I cut him off, my voice rising. "Don't touch me. Don't come near me." Alvaro's hands dropped, and he looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I know I've hurt you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I still love you." I laughed, a harsh sound. "Love?" I repeated, my voice dripping with contempt. "You call this love? Cheating on me with my best friend?" Alvaro flinched, but I kept going. "You've destroyed me, Alvaro. You've destroyed our marriage, our friendship, everything." The words hung in the air, a challenge to Alvaro's conscience. He looked at me, his eyes searching for forgiveness. But I couldn't give it to him. Not now. Maybe not ever. I turned and walked away, leaving Alvaro standing alone in the kitchen. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get out of there. I ended up in the park, sitting on a bench, staring blankly at the trees. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the grass. I felt empty, hollow. My mind kept replaying the conversation with Alvaro, the words echoing in my head like a mantra. I thought about Sophia, about how she had betrayed me. I thought about Alvaro, about how he had lied to me. And I thought about myself, about how I had let this happen. The questions swirled in my head, taunting me. What had I done wrong? Had I been blind to the signs? Had I ignored the warning signals? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I didn't know anything anymore. Not about Alvaro, not about Sophia, and not about myself. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the park in darkness. I sat there, frozen in time, unsure of what the future held. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. I packed my bags, the silence between us oppressive. Alvaro watched me, his eyes red-rimmed, but I couldn't look at him. I couldn't bear the sight of him. I grabbed my essentials, stuffing them into suitcases, trying to focus on the task at hand. As I finished packing, I took one last look around the apartment. Our apartment. The place where we'd shared so many memories, laughter, and tears. Now it felt tainted, corrupted by his betrayal. I turned to Alvaro, my voice cold. "I'm leaving," I said, my words firm. Alvaro nodded, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I understand," he muttered. I walked out of the apartment, the door closing behind me with a soft click. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I hailed a taxi and headed to my friend's place, a temporary refuge from the storm that had ravaged my life. As I sat in the taxi, I couldn't help but think about the past few weeks. The discovery of Alvaro's infidelity, the confrontation, the pain and anger that had consumed me. It all seemed like a blur now, a hazy memory that I couldn't shake. I arrived at my friend's place, a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. She welcomed me with open arms, her expression sympathetic. "I'm so sorry, Lucia," she said, holding me tight. "You're welcome to stay here as long as you need." I thanked her, feeling a lump form in my throat. I knew I had to be strong, to get through this difficult time. But it was hard. The pain of betrayal still lingered. a raw wound that refused to heal. As I settled into my friend's apartment, I began to reflect on the experience. I thought about Alvaro, about his infidelity, about the lies he'd told me. I thought about Sophia, about her betrayal, about the friendship we'd once shared. I realized that I'd been living in a bubble, a world of my own creation. I'd ignored the signs, the warning signals that something was wrong. I'd been blind to the truth, and now I was paying the price. But as I sat in my friend's apartment, surrounded by her warmth and kindness, I knew I had to move forward. I had to heal, to rebuild my life. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to try. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to come to terms with what had happened. I cried, I raged, I questioned. But slowly, I began to see things more clearly. I saw the flaws in our relationship, the cracks that had been papered over with love and commitment. I saw the signs, the subtle hints that something was wrong. The late nights, the distant behavior, the evasive answers. I saw it all now, and I realized that I'd been living in denial. But I couldn't change the past. All I could do was move forward, one step at a time. I started to rebuild my life, to rediscover myself. It was a journey, a long and difficult one, but I was determined to take it, to find myself again. As I looked out the window, watching the sun set over the city, I knew that I had a long way to go, but I was ready. I was ready to face the future, to face myself. I was ready to heal, to move on. I stood outside Sophia's apartment, my heart racing with anticipation. I hadn't seen her since the truth came out, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Sophia answered, her eyes widening in surprise when she saw me. "Lucia," she said, her voice cautious. I stepped forward, my eyes locked on hers. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. Sophia nodded, stepping aside to let me in. We walked into her living room, the familiar surroundings now feeling foreign and uncomfortable. "Why?" I asked, my voice direct. "Why did you do it? Why did you betray me?" Sophia looked at me, her eyes searching for understanding. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice soft. "I fell in love with Alvaro, and I couldn't help how I felt." I laughed, a harsh sound. "Fell in love?" I repeated, my voice incredulous. "You fell in love with my husband, and you didn't even consider how it would affect me?" Sophia's eyes dropped, and she nodded. "I know it was wrong," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I couldn't help myself. I was drawn to him, and he to me." I felt a surge of anger at her words. "You're sorry?" I asked, my voice rising. "You're sorry for destroying our friendship? For ruining my marriage?" Sophia looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry for hurting you," she said, her voice cracking. "I never meant for it to go this far." I shook my head, my anger and hurt boiling over. "You never thought about me," I said, my voice cold. "You never thought about our friendship, about the trust we had. You only thought about yourself and your feelings for Alvaro." Sophia's face reddened, and she stood up, her eyes flashing with anger. "You're not innocent, Lucia," she said, her voice rising. "You're not blameless in all this. You were so caught up in your own world, you didn't even notice what was happening right under your nose." I felt a sting from her words, but I knew she was trying to deflect the blame. "That doesn't excuse what you did," I said, my voice firm. "You were my best friend, and you betrayed me. You'll have to live with that." Sophia's face fell, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of regret. But it was too late. The damage was done. Our friendship was over, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I turned and walked out of her apartment, the door closing behind me with a soft click. I knew I'd never be able to go back to the way things were before. I sat in my new apartment, surrounded by the familiar comforts of my own space. It had been months since I'd left Alvaro and cut ties with Sofia. The wounds were still fresh, but I was healing. I was learning to navigate this new chapter of my life, and I discovered some valuable lessons along the way. First and foremost, I'd learned to prioritize myself. I'd been so focused on Alvaro and our relationship that I'd lost sight of my own needs and desires. I'd neglected my own happiness, my own well-being. But now, I was making time for myself. I was rediscovering old hobbies, trying new things, and exploring my own interests. I'd also learned to set boundaries. I'd always been a people pleaser, trying to make everyone happy around me. But I'd realized that wasn't sustainable. I'd learned to say no, to prioritize my own needs, and to communicate my boundaries clearly. Another important lesson I'd learned was the value of self-care. I'd been so caught up in the drama of my relationship that I'd forgotten to take care of myself. I'd neglected my physical and mental health, and it had taken a toll. But now, I was making self-care a priority. I was exercising regularly, eating well, and taking time to relax and unwind. As I looked around my apartment, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. I'd rebuilt my life, and it was beautiful. I'd learned so much about myself, about relationships, and about what I wanted out of life. I was excited for the future, and I knew that I was ready for whatever came next. I thought back to the conversations I'd had with Alvaro and Sofia, and I realized that I'd grown as a person. I'd learned to stand up for myself, to communicate effectively, and to prioritize my own needs. I'd discovered a strength and resilience within myself that I never knew I had. I was still figuring things out, but I was okay with that. I was okay with not having all the answers, with taking things one step at a time. I was learning to be patient, to trust the process, and to have faith in myself. As I sat there, surrounded by the quiet comforts of my apartment, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I knew that I still had a long way to go, but I was ready for the journey. I was ready to see where life would take me, and to learn from every experience along the way. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my window, a gentle reminder that life goes on. It had been weeks since I'd left Alvaro, and the pain still lingered, but I was determined to heal, to move forward. I started by taking small steps, tiny actions that would help me rebuild my life. I began by reconnecting with old friends, people who had known me before Alvaro and Sofia's betrayal. They listened, they supported me, and they reminded me of who I used to be. I also started taking classes, trying new things, and exploring interests I'd put on hold during my relationship. One day, I signed up for a painting class. I'd never been much of an artist, but something about creating something beautiful appealed to me. As I sat in front of the canvas, brush in hand, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The strokes of the brush were soothing, the colors blending together in a beautiful mess. The instructor, a kind woman named Maria, noticed my struggles and walked over to guide me. "Don't worry, it's all about experimentation," she said, her voice gentle. "Let go of perfection and just enjoy the process." Her words resonated with me, and I began to let go of my fears. As the weeks went by, I found solace in painting. It was therapeutic, a way for me to express myself without words. I started to see the world in a different light, to notice the beauty in everyday things. I began to realize that I was more than just Alvaro's partner, more than just Sofia's friend. I was an individual, with my own thoughts, feelings, and desires. One evening, as I was leaving class, Maria approached me. "Lucia, I've noticed your progress," she said, her eyes warm. "You have a talent for capturing emotions on canvas. Keep exploring. Keep creating." Her words meant a lot to me, and I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. As I walked home, I felt a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in a long time. I was discovering new aspects of myself, and it was exhilarating. I was learning to love myself, to appreciate my strengths and weaknesses. I was healing, slowly but surely. I realized that I didn't need Alvaro or Sofia to complete me. I was whole on my own, with my own interests, passions, and dreams. I was starting to see a new future, one where I was the protagonist, the hero of my own story. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. I continued to paint, to create, and to explore. I was finding myself, piece by piece, and it was a beautiful journey. I knew that I still had a long way to go, but I was excited for the road ahead. I was excited to see who I would become, what I would create, and where life would take me. I sat in front of the camera, my thoughts racing as I tried to put into words the lessons I'd learned from my experience. I took a deep breath and began to speak, my voice sincere and heartfelt. If you're watching this, chances are you've gone through something similar. You've been hurt, you've been betrayed, or you've struggled to find yourself in the midst of chaos. I want you to know that you're not alone. We're all in this together, navigating the ups and downs of life. I paused, collecting my thoughts before continuing. I want to hear from you. What's your story? How have you dealt with betrayal, heartbreak, or self-discovery? Share your thoughts, share your experiences. Let's start a conversation, let's support each other, and let's grow from our struggles. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on the camera. If you're willing, please leave a comment below. Share your story, ask a question, or offer words of encouragement. Let's build a community, a safe space where we can be honest, vulnerable, and real. I smiled, my voice filled with conviction. Together, we can heal, we can grow, and we can find ourselves. Let's do this. Let's start the conversation. I'm listening, and I'm here to support you. This is the end of my story. Thank you for watching, and if you like this kind of content, kindly leave us a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thank you.